This is IBM Museum. I'm going to get quickly turned around here to explain this video just a little bit more deeper. So recently I pulled the components of a Model 60, the planar and drives, to swap in a reply planar, and I was surprised when I looked at this disk. And of course this panel is hidden away when it's against the back of the drive cage, and that's the primary position for a C drive, the first hard drive of the system. If there's a second hard drive, it's put in this forward position. And the reason it surprised me is because the MFM controller I pulled out, and as I remarked on that video, this thing is all kinds of dirty, and who knows what this is. Sometimes if you leave any of the back brackets, if you store any of these machines, do yourself a favor and put the back blockouts in place, or cover this, because insects and even mice will use those areas to get in the system and leave nasty little things like that. As I pointed out, I do have other ones of these adapters for getting set up, and the Model 60 was the only system that had these MFM adapters, even that 8560-041 model with the 40 megabyte MFM drive in it. Now this is it wouldn't be an original drive for the Model 60, and it is a 44 megabyte drive, and it is MFM as well. And in fact, let me pull up a little bit of the what I found online for that. Okay, and I'm just going to briefly pause here. And I just went out and did a very quick search on it to find this on station.org. And it even gives the switch block settings and things like that I can use at some later point when I have that drive running on the system. But it just confused me because having those drives paired together with that MFM controller seemed like I was trying to read the contents of this drive, not being aware it was an ESDI drive. So what I did is I went and retrieved my Model 60 with an ESDI controller on it. And what I want to do is to switch in this drive just to see if I can now read it. What I may have done all those years ago. And I'm just curious of what is on this drive. Now, this is a drive that would have been placed on a Model 60. This was actually in place on some of the higher level Model 80s, because it is 314 megabyte, I think. And the Model 60 just didn't have any. It actually had, the ESDI models had this 70 megabyte drive. They were just those two submodels of the Model 60. And so the first thing I want to do when I swap this system in, even though this is an ESDI drive, it's different parameters in this unit. I'm not changing anything else to the system, any adapters or anything like that. But I want to make sure that any parameters that it's set to for this drive. This is a particular drive type that is set up in a particular way. So I want to go through and pull the battery just to drop any configuration that I may have. And I've actually got a diskette drive, and I have a reference diskette that I can go through and run to get this set up once I get it going. And I'm just going to go through and loosen up the drive cage. Now, it's easy also to confuse these because they do use the MFM and the ESDI drives that were on the Model 60 and Model 80 do use the same cable connections. They have a common data cable that actually has a twist in it, much like a diskette drive would have, only it's the twist is at the other end that they share. If you have a dual drive system, then this other P2 goes to that drive as it sits in here, and each drive has a separate control cable end. And this is missing the back. That's why it's all grimy. And no, I guess not. It's just got that. It's got raised writing. That's not wiring, but it's got that black goop on it. That's from the case. That stuff is just nasty and gets everywhere. So, I mean, it's probably a mistake. I mean, I may have gone through, and who knows where I got the system. I may have just missed it or not keyed in to where it said ESD on it, and it was in this. Get these cables disconnected. I may have to just pull this ESDI adapter briefly. And there's not much confusion, and even the identifier of the ESDI hard disk attachment. I think the drive was that 70 megabyte drive on that Model 60 was in this back position, and I've even thought about it to have a case and restore my. This would be my restored original Model 60 if I went that route to have a Model 60 that was just like it was released from the factory. And I can take that 300 megabyte, and that even had some of the utility that I was writing for figuring out the microcode revision of the ESDI controller. And so I had some other cables here. For the power. In fact, I'll even put that on that back connector. If I put another drive in there, then that goes to the forward position. Things are pretty good and tight. And this is how that assembly should be. And even it is a little bit smooched up with that foam. Just getting some denatured alcohol that will cut into that sticky stuff and get on my hands. And I think I'll even have to clean my bench up afterwards because it's got some goop that was on the bottom. And so and as I say, identical connections to the MFM style drives. And on the ESDI controller, this is your common data cable connection. This is your control cable connection for that C drive or your first drive. And this is the second connection for a second control connection for another drive. And of course, without a drive in this spot, then this is normally not connected. And so and the ESDI controller, I did have a video, even maybe more than one video, on that microcode utility I'm working on. And so they actually, it had, I think, even 7 releases of that microcode. And you always want to make sure that you're on that last or the latest microcode version, just because they found all the bugs and on the earlier versions. And IBM released what they called ECAs, or engineering change announcements. So that is how that cable is supposed to play in there. And we can go through, we'll get the battery back in place. And I'll go through. This is my video. Be careful not to bump my SkyCam connection. Okay, and I have these labeled as M for mouse, K for keyboard. I don't know if the back of the case is visible for you guys. And get the power connected. And let's get the battery in there. And I don't know how long it takes of having that battery out to truly drain everything away, but okay, and I've got the diskette drive in there with the reference diskette. So let's go through. I even wonder if I'm going to need to adjust. No, I have that 640 by 480. So let's get that on the screen. Got the battery back in. And power up. And you hear that jet engine starting up. Okay, and I even see disk. Okay, and strangely it didn't give, that battery may have to be out there, out of the system a lot longer or something there. Get my keyboard over here. Okay. And let's take a look. Okay, and it still has a current time and close to a date. Or close to a correct date, but different time. And so I'm going to just run the automatic configuration, and hopefully that should populate the correct drive type in there. I think the MFM controller, you had to have the specific drive type. The ESDI may have some sort of header information in there on the drive, a spot on the drive that it reads the capacity and all the defect map and everything. Okay. And it was like ESDI is Enhanced System Drive Interface, something like that. They considered it enhanced at the time. So, okay. And so we're going to go through and eject that reference diskette. And moment of truth. I heard the drive a little bit. Single beep. Good. So now we know it's MS-DOS, it's on the system. Whether that was, I don't know if that was me or not. And it beeped with the Tecmar micro RAM. I don't know if I have one of those around. And then it has the driver for the Kingston Technology Corporation SX Now. And so the Model 60 planer that I pulled out of the other case did not have a CPU in there. And so maybe that had a Kingston module that I went through and pulled for documentation. There was many years ago that me and UXW Bill on YouTube went through and compiled some information on those Kingston CPU upgrades, those SX Now. So that's what it's got, the driver, and I may even have a newer driver than that now. And then installed the driver nonetheless without that SX Now CPU being in there, and that typically just enables the cache. Diskette driver. So it looks like it had one of those diskette adapter A's in there with the driver. I was known to test those back in the day too. So I don't know what point I was necessarily confused about if I worked with the system of trying to put in that MFM controller and work with things. It's just odd. I just may have been in a frame of mind that I thought that that was an MFM drive at the time. And so I can go through and add in, if I wanted that diskette adapter A again, if I wanted to restore this to that condition, who knows if I want to go through. If I'm making an original Model 60, I'll just leave it at the 286 CPU. And then it runs the smart drive. It installed the mouse driver. And it tells us it's MS-DOS version 6.20. So, let's see. I mean, the drive looks to be okay, and I don't get any input from the keyboard, but I was able to run through the menus on the reference diskette. So it may be one of those drivers interfering with my keyboard input. And I think I'm just going to quickly boot to the, since I have it handy, that system information tool diskette. It's a bootable diskette. And since Control-Delete won't even work on the keyboard, go through and power it down. I had a light for like the num lock on it, but so, and just the fact that it worked under the reference diskette, because these do have a fuse for the keyboard. And if you go through a situation where it doesn't look like you're getting power to the keyboard, it's a good thing to check that fuse if you're on a PS2 that has that protection. And I think that's mainly Model 60, Model 50, I think. I think the 70s and Model 70 and Model 80 also did it that way too. And there's a pause. It's like it tries to identify that hard drive. Okay. So let's see if we can get onto C drive. And I have keyboard input all of a sudden. And so something of the drivers to that. And wow, let me do a pause on that. Just a more. Oh, I don't do that in the more. It can't be piped to more. You do a directory. It's an internal command, and you use /p as a pause. DOS and old DOS, Mahjong, Kingston, even Windows, Win drivers, WinEase, Sim games, Monitor, and then there's that TechMem Sys for the memory adapter, WordPerfect for Windows, WPC, I'm trying to remember what that is. target directory, guest directory. There's the diskette adapter A. And it's got a Q, whatever Q is. An install exe, install bat. Target bat, disk ID. So what I was just thinking on doing, MS-DOS, we should have the edit. And even though we booted from a okay. Okay, I want to try. I want to get a mouse driver loaded, and that's the 8.20. That was a pretty common version, the mouse driver. And we should have the edit. And I'll even have mouse driver. Let me get better situated with the keyboard and the mouse. And I was anticipating that this would be just a short video. All the tangles I have on that. Okay, I'm free. That standard soap bar mouse, IBM. Get that set up. And okay, we got movement. We're going to go. Oh, and so this even looks like a compression utility on here too, because normally, and it was MS-DOS 6.20. That's with the double space that was, I think, was found to be infringing upon the stacker patent. And so the host drive was under the H, and then the compressed drive under the C partition. So it might even be worthwhile to see, and I'm just going to do comments. I'm going to comment these out, and I can always add them in later on. I don't really need necessarily the setver and the high memsys, but that's fine. Okay, and so the device, the DOS EMM386.exe, that'd be for if I have that Kingston CPU upgrade in there. It's not, and it's already commented out. And I'm able to load DOS into that upper memory block, the UMB. Last drive, file control block. And then see, setver is listed again, but then there it's commented out. Break on. We even have our shell command. Device I, and even the Windows I have on there, that may be loaded with that Kingston module. and thus in that 386 enhanced, probably with even the memory adapter that used to be in there, that TechMem or TechMar. ANSI sys has commented out just all sorts of things. Stacks, DOS high. Yeah, see, there's our double space .sys for compressed drive. Okay, so we want to comment out the Kingston driver. For the moment, we're going to comment out the, until I get a diskette adapter A back in there. And the drive param is probably paired with it, with just that single. Okay, driver sys is coming out. Buffers. All the regular, even the stacks. Okay. So we're going to go Alt F S, Alt F O for open. And we are still in the root directory as seen by that C. And then the auto exec.bat. Okay, so smart drive, echo off, com spec, verify off, set mouse. So it's set mouse equals C Windows, but then it's using the mouse driver as I did in the DOS directory. And the DOS directory is in the path. I don't know why it wasn't able to run the edit command from the root directory before. Okay. And that's where it reports our version. And then even there, it's with a hard switch of Win/3 to put us in 386 enhanced mode is what that looks like. And then quicken. Maybe that's the QBAT that was in there before. So Alt F S, Alt F exit. We just edited. Okay. So looking at volume in dry C is DOS 400. So evidently had DOS 4 on there at one point. That's probably that old DOS. Uptune and wow. So with the Kingston chip and then re-enabling that driver, that may be something to look over on here as well. And I should have looked at the dates on, I guess I did a directory listing earlier. Just to review, at some later point I'll go back and look at the dates on those config sys and auto exec.bat, because that's probably close to the last time that this system was touched, this drive was used. because otherwise those files, they're even looking back in the all through the 90s. And I only see the newer date on like the monitor directory. Wow. So quite some old stuff. And I was trying to calculate so many bytes free. That doesn't seem that's just interesting to me. It might be even interesting to run the system information tool over that as well, just to see, because that doesn't seem like a whole bunch of space. That I can't remember if you can get into, I guess you can, that host drive. That's got the command.com in there. Host for C. So because I can't figure out how that's a compressed drive and still looks pretty small to me. Like there's, okay. And then even 25 megabytes free on the host drive. And the way I understand it is the C drive, when it's compressed, is ultimately it's a file that's opened at boot time. And that's probably a little bit of what that pause is at the start. It even makes me wonder if I could boot from that DOS 6.21, because that had compression removed from it. I don't know if it was probably for compatibility reasons it was made aware of the older compression schemes. But that was unusual time for Microsoft. So, but that's it. That's reading the, going through and looking at that drive and getting it on attached to the right controller and being sure of what interface you need for a hard drive. Unlike me going through, likely me going through and connecting it up to an MFM controller and thinking, hey, can I work with this drive somehow? And so I'm not going to dip into any of the programs otherwise here. I could go through and just make sure that we've got all our changes in there correctly to eject that bootable diskette, boot from the hard drive once again. And then what I'm looking at for the next video is going to be a little interesting too. I don't know if I'm going to do that today or save that for tomorrow. But trying to get that OS 2, what looks to be OS 2.2.0, on the SCSI drive of the Model 65SX. And I had to boot from the SIT diskette and look at that to see. Okay, so we didn't get any beeps or errors on that boot time, and that's what I wanted to do by editing config sys and autoexec bat. Just get all the drivers that were not used, and I'll look around and see if I have one of those Tecmar memory adapters, just because I have the driver already there, and might be something to load up and install on the system. As I say, I'm kind of torn on the Kingston upgrade, but we'll see. I guess I could put the Intel upgrade in there as well, or that may be this may be a good platform to test them against each other, how they even compare to the original 286 CPU as well. That yet another video idea pops up. So, but that's where I wanted to end this. I wanted to read the drive and see what I got, and once CPU upgrades in there, we can see how Windows, or even see what Windows looks like. So, a good video, longer than I expected, and just over 41 minutes, so doing good. But if you like this content, go ahead and click on that like button and subscribe to my channel if you have not already. There's going to be lots of unusual content like this time to time. I go with whatever's presented and try and take a step further. But that's all I have for now. This is IBM Museum. Thank you.